Welcome back to the Mold Show. I am your host, as always, Adam Horn. I am joined today with Sean McGrath, as usual, and we have a special guest, Chris Thome. Thome,
you got it right.
Thome,
Yes.
okay, I don't know. I'm the old baseball player, Thome.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm sure everybody says your name wrong, but
I taught him everything he knows except how to pronounce his last name.
Yeah. I am a Florida state licensed mold remediator. Sean is a state of Florida licensed mold assessor, and Chris is an AC guru, NADCA-certified. Chris, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you, your company, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of why we had you join us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me. It's always enjoyable to be around others that are very knowledgeable and really are passionate about, getting all of this stuff right for people that are really needing assistance with their indoor environment as it pertains to their health.
Well, I feel like we've been teasing it for episodes and episodes, Adam. It's like every time we're going to get an HVAC guy on. We're going to get an HVAC guy on. We finally got Chris on.
Well, we'll definitely try to, answer some questions and help everybody feel a little bit more comfortable with navigating a very stressful, usually time for them in dealing with issues with their home. So I've, along with my wife, Brandy, and business partner, we own Enviro Air Systems. We've been doing that, this company since 2016. We had an environmental consulting business in California prior to that, for a few years. I've been doing this now for over 25 years. I started back in 1999, HVAC mold remediation, in all of the different building classifications: residential, commercial, industrial, healthcare facilities, lots of hospitals, schools every summer, marine vessels, been on a Navy ship, a couple private yachts, they all have ventilation. So anything that would require someone needing assistance with the HVAC system and helping them diagnose issues, mold related, and obviously indoor air quality concerns that they have, getting it properly diagnosed and addressed and getting it back to a good, clean, healthy working condition for them so that they can be in that environment and feel okay.
Yeah, I always tell people, we go through the report, which talks about all the areas that have sustained water damage and ultimately resulted in some type of mold growth, or we think it does. And then we get to the discussion of the HVAC system, which, in my opinion, supersedes anything that needs to be done in the actual building in most cases, because that's the air that you are coming in contact with. It's pushing air through your homes. It's the lungs of the home. We all love to say that.
Yeah.
And if it is contaminated, we can do our best to clean and decontaminate the building or the structure. But if it's coming out of your vents, you're in big trouble in a lot of cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're having issues, elsewhere in the environment, the HVAC system is now just basically picking that up and circulating it around all of that environment. So it's always good, what the three of us do, from Sean doing an assessment and being able to do testing to know exactly what types of molds and amounts that we're dealing with, both for what you deal with, Adam, and myself on the HVAC side, and then you handling all of the other parts of the environment that might have issues. And then, of course, our part is the HVAC. And lately, really, we've been really focusing on all kinds of other aspects in and around the HVAC system that create indoor air quality problems. Elevated humidity leads to microbial contamination, from insulation problems to ventilation issues within the attic, pressurization problems through the building. All of those things really are important to be addressed when trying to properly diagnose what's going on, and to make sure that when we're done and someone's done dealing with such a difficult situation, that they know that it's been done correctly, and that moving forward, all they're left with is just, simply monitoring the environment to make sure that it stays where we intend it, where we got it to from all of our work.
So, Chris, anytime we have contamination in the ventilation system, whether it's caused by the ventilation system itself, we know down here in Florida, the air handler itself can wreak its own havoc, so to speak. So whether it's that or whether we have cross-contamination from the house, we always specifically recommend a NADCA-certified HVAC company. Can you explain to us what it means to be NADCA-certified?
Absolutely. So NADCA is the National Air Duct Cleaners Association. They are the only association that has a standard which explains the proper protocols for, they call it the ACR 2020. ACR stands for Assessment, Cleaning, and Restoration. So that's the only standard out there that explains how to properly go about assessing an HVAC system, what are the proper protocols for cleaning that, what types of equipment is necessary, and they also have an inspection schedule within that standard, and they have verification methods for determining that the system has been cleaned properly. It is for cleaning. NADCA started kind of up north, so you had a lot of furnaces. You got a lot of soot from those furnaces, a lot of sheet metal ductwork. Commercial is a lot of sheet metal ductwork. A lot of that is cleanable and can be restored. And when it comes to mold, though, they're like some of the other ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, Air Conditioning Engineers, the IICRC, all of those organizations. When we're actually dealing with mold contamination within the HVAC, of course, the number one recommendation is replacement. That's the only way to guarantee 100% that it is gone. However, there are some other acceptable remediation options. For residential, it really depends on the type of ductwork, level of contamination that you're dealing with, as to what types of recommendations should be made. We always refer back to the NADCA standard to make sure that we are implementing proper containment strategies, engineering controls, safety measures. All of those things are within that standard to help guide anyone that's doing this work to make sure that it's being done correctly. A lot of companies out there are engaged in this type of work that aren't NADCA certified, so they don't have any standard that they're following to say, if I find this is what I should do. If I find that, this is what I should do. There's nothing else out there. And NADCA is an international standard now. The most recent one is they came out with ACR 2020. So we have, as far as in that organization, when we have yearly meetings, people are coming from all over the world to that and partaking in, making sure that everyone is aware of what's happening in different areas. And of course, different areas of the country and world kind of require a little bit, different methodology and approach to what they're doing. What we're doing down here in the Southeast doesn't necessarily always apply to someone up north that's dealing with more furnace units and a lot of heat as far as the HVAC. And we're dealing with a lot of mold contamination, and it's tricky when it comes to dealing with that. NADCA doesn't require you to be a licensed HVAC contractor. So many states also don't require that. So they do certify companies. However, when you're dealing with mold and it comes down to needing to replace something, you have to have an air conditioning license in order to be able to pull permits, in order to replace equipment, ductwork. So, there's a little bit when someone's looking for a NADCA-certified company, they also have to look a little bit further and make sure that they also carry the appropriate licenses to be able to do the right thing. Because, for some duct cleaners out there, they can't do that work. They can't pull permits to replace stuff. They're not being able to address the air conditioning system itself properly. And they end up they do try to clean stuff that really is not cleanable. And that can create, a whole other set of problems.
Yeah, not only that, similar to what I deal with from the structural standpoint is if you're not able to address the cause because you're not an HVAC contractor, cleaning the system is a temporary fix. And are you going to even be able to clean it to any kind of real standard?
Yeah.
Without addressing why it's there in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And probably my training as an insurance adjuster years ago to determine whether something was covered or not. The question was always cause and origin, right? That's what was drilled into my head from the very beginning. And before I got, to go out in the field and adjust my first claim, it was hammered in. Cause of loss. Why is it there? Is it, so that's kind of my approach when I go into buildings and I get the reports like you do, isn't just to say, hey, yeah, I have to remove this material and clean this environment that has mold growth in it, but why is it there? Because if I can do that, you can do what you have to do. And ultimately, if the cause isn't on the forefront, fixed, whether it's easy fix and you can see, yep, this pipe leaked, or this, toilet overflowed, or whatever the cause is, this roof leak. If you can't correct that cause or at least identify it, then the conditions are going to return and you're going to get regrowth. And I know that you run into those questions all the time. And sometimes it's not completely evident why it's occurring, at least to the people outside of your industry. You see it a lot, therefore you're able to identify it a lot easier than others. So maybe my next question is, from the standpoint of identification, what do you ultimately run into a lot? What helps you kind of put the puzzle pieces together when you get out there and you look at the system? We know it has mold in it. What do you do at that point to try to help them figure out how to avoid it in the future?
Obviously addressing all of those issues, from anything that could be contributing to elevated humidity and for installation of the HVAC system. Find that a lot. Just not good quality of workmanship. So a lot of the time they're dealing with issues because of leakage, cabinet leakage for the air handler, pulling in humid air, just proper maintenance of the equipment. I hear a lot of people tell me about recommendations that their AC companies have made that aren't really the greatest. There's a lot of times, for example, upgraded filtration. You can only go so high on filtration. And so people are spending a lot of money on these upgraded filters, but then they're not following a proper maintenance schedule for replacement. And, I go look at it and the filter is bowed in, and I ask them, when's the last place in this month? No, the AC company that they said replace it every 6 months. Well, if that filter is removing as much as it claims, after a month of air has passed through that filter, you get bacteria buildup, you get odor buildup, and the more it becomes impacted, the more restriction you put on the equipment, and you start creating problems, just from something that should be helping you, but actually created a problem rather than actually doing any good. So I just try to point out a lot of different things that create elevated humidity, and that obviously creates mold growth.
Mm-hmm.
So those, again, a lot of things now we're focusing on, not just the HVAC, but a lot of things around the environment that are impacting even a properly installed system that we're finding having issues as a result of other things within the environment. So it just really trying to focus on making sure that they're aware that these things are not being done correctly, and these are the ways that should be done correctly, and just trying to make sure that they understand this is where we are and this is where we're trying to get to, and this is how we're gonna make it happen.
Sean, I have one more. I had a lot of questions as you were talking right there. I came to the realization we're gonna have to do a lot of these shows because I have so many things to talk about. You just talked about filters, and it made me kind of giggle for a second because I spend a lot of money on filters in our industry, right? I'm constantly replacing filters daily, sometimes multiple times a day on my equipment. Where did the filter should last this long thing even come from? Because I don't see it on the box. It doesn't say on the filter, replace every 30 days. Where did this whole notion of a filter should last a certain amount of time even come from? Because if you're in an environment where you're creating tons of dust, and you have 4 dogs and 4 children and carpet and curtains and blinds and collectibles, and you just have this dusty environment, aren't your filters going to get clogged way quicker? So shouldn't it just be as simple as the visible standard? If it looks dirty, it's dirty. I mean, that should be the basic minimum, right?
Yeah. And, obviously in a lab, and filter companies can make certain claims because in the lab it is removing the things that it claims.
I know it does, but time frame wise, where people get into this false sense of security, it's a 6-month filter, like that to me lends to part of the problem where people just assume because they've been told
that all living conditions are assumed to be the same.
Yeah.
That notion.
Absolutely. And you also want to realize that the main purpose of a filter for the air conditioner is to keep dirt out of the inside of the filter. You understand then in the remediation, in order to get air changes per hour, you have to run your air scrubbers 24/7. I mean, you don't have those things shut off every 15 minutes and then kick back on 15 and expect to maintain the particulate load within the environment. So a lot of people, they spend a lot of money and they read, the filter will do this and it does that to improve the air quality. With the air conditioner shutting on and off, it's very limited in what it's actually doing to reduce the particle load of the environment. When you install an air conditioning system, you have a static pressure. It's like a 1/2-inch water column, and it's acceptable up to 1-inch water column. So we start with a 1/2 inch of water column when we put the air conditioner in. Just by putting a clean 1-inch MERV 8 filter in there, we double the static pressure. Now that's a clean filter. Now, as soon as that starts to become impacted, static pressure starts to change. It starts to rise. When you have static pressure issues within the system, believe it or not, it causes moisture problems and leads to mold growth a lot of times. So there are upgraded filters that can be used, but there's sometimes your extended pleated filters. They'll say, okay, good for 3 months. I would tell someone you need to replace that in half the time that it's recommended.
Right.
6 months. They're listed on there. Some of them they say
they do say that on there. They actually say the time on there.
Yeah, on the wrapping. Once you take the wrapping off, you don't see that on there anymore.
Right.
Somebody had a filter. She said they change it once a year, and it was just incredibly dirty. She had what happens when that filter starts to become impacted. The air conditioner still has to provide a certain amount of air to the coil.
Right.
It has to. And so it's going to, air will take the path of least resistance. So if you have an impacted filter after 1 month, 2 months of filtering all the stuff out of the air that it claims, now all you're getting is you filter bypass. So it's going right around the outsides of the filter, and you're really not even filtering anything at that point. You just have a clogged, dirty filter sitting in there until you finally get around to pulling it out and putting the new one in. So filter maintenance is a little tricky. I really try to stick with just a standard 1-inch pleated, anywhere from MERV 8 to MERV 11. any higher than that, and you're really putting some serious restriction on the system, and that's clean. You start to get that filter impacted, and you're really putting some issues, some strain on the system that a lot of times just it leads to mold contamination. For example, if you have a clogged filter and you have a variable speed motor, right? So that blower motor is running at a certain speed. It's pulling the air through the coil at a certain rate.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting cooling, you're getting some dehumidification as a result of the refrigeration process. If you have an impacted filter, well, that variable speed motor is going to ramp up and start running much faster to satisfy the air that the coil requires. Now it's moving through that coil much faster. You're getting less cooling, you're getting less dehumidification occurring because the air is spending less time in that coil.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and so just by having a clogged filter, not keeping up with proper maintenance, you can cause the humidity to, obviously, air conditioners, they can maintain the humidity usually in the house in the mid 50s, and that's acceptable, right? Anything under 60% we feel is okay. We would like it a lot lower, but really to get it down in the 40s, the high 40s, you really have to have a dedicated dehumidifier. So your air conditioner can, for the most part, keep it maintained in an acceptable range by just having that a filter that's a little bit restrictive. Your fan speed ramps up. Now you're running not in the mid 50s as a result of that less dehumidification occurring from the refrigeration process. Now you're running in the high 50s, possibly in the low 60s. And of course, now that environment's conducive to mold growth. And so that's just one little thing. And that's a simple a filter maintenance, not being properly maintained. And unfortunately, companies that are being asked about this, that are maintaining this equipment, your standard air conditioning company, aren't really giving people the proper information. And I'm not sure if they even really realize what they're doing when they're making these recommendations about filters. And of course, people that aren't feeling well, all they can think is, I need a HEPA filter on my air conditioner. Well, you definitely can't run a HEPA filter on your air conditioner. You would have no air pass through there.
Right.
So you have to kind of educate them that, we want a good filter, but it's more important that we're changing it on a proper schedule than using this super high MERV rated filter and then not replacing it, but every 6 months to a year.
Not only that, the better the filter, the quicker it gets dirty.
Absolutely. Yeah. So usually the higher MERV rated ones in a lab, great, right? But in a real world setting, it doesn't work that way. And the higher the rating, the better the filter, the more stuff that it's removing. Is it removing all of that stuff that it claims? Absolutely. But we have to understand that there are other ways of actually improving the air quality. The filter can be done, but there are other ways that the equipment has to operate, and there are some side effects of operating in it in that manner. So we really just want to keep to a minimum MERV rating. If we're using anything higher, always see what the recommended time frame for replacement is. I usually recommend half that. And if we're just using a standard 1-inch pleated filter, MERV 8, MERV 10, monthly. And it's budgetary. It's budgetary for most people. If you have 4 or 5 return, filter grills in your house, well, that's 5 filters. If you're spending, $20 a filter, well, there's $100 once a month. Not everybody has $100 to replace on filters every month. So I always come back to, it is budgetary. So we want to make sure that what we are utilizing is doing what we're, expecting it to do, not thinking that it's doing a lot more than it is, and just maybe spending a little bit less on the filter so that you can replace it monthly would be better than trying to let it stay in there because you spent more money on it and it's not really feasible to replace it so frequently. And then, of course, there's other types of things within those filters that you can utilize. For example, carbon pleated filters remove odor,
yeah.
or formaldehyde. So somebody that has pets or something, and of course those filters are a little bit more because there's an additional component to that filter. And so I just really try to find out what people are trying to achieve. I always get, what about this filter? What about that filter? Well, what are you trying to achieve with this filter? Oh, I'm trying to make my air quality better. Let's understand really what the air conditioning filter really is doing, first of all. And that's the main purpose, is to keep air out of the inside of that keep dirt out of the inside of the air handling unit, which then mold can feed on. So we want to make sure we keep up with that filter maintenance to make sure that we don't get that Boeing effect and filter bypass. And then we're not even getting any benefit
Right.
from the filter. And there are other ways to reduce the particle load, of the environment. Some of it does happen. Obviously, I mean, the filter is removing stuff. Look how nasty they are when you go look at it a month later. I mean, it has removed stuff that is pulled through it, but a lot of people only have one return filter in their house. If you think about that one filter, is it pulling air from the back bedroom underneath the bed, or from the back bathroom or closet? So that air probably isn't ever even making its way to that filter. So we have other ways of addressing the environment along with the HVAC system, but you have to understand what those things are and how you proceed, and be very careful, because there's so many things I hear that AC companies are offering, for preventive measures within the HVAC. And a lot of people are throwing all kinds of money at it, expecting certain results and never getting those results, because things just aren't quite being implemented correctly or understood correctly to even be able to get to what we're trying to achieve within the environment, which is low particulate count, maintaining microbial growth. So all of those things are impacted just by a filter maintenance. So that's something as simple as that.
Chris, you could have a Bugatti in your driveway and not change the oil, and that thing is built like to military grade standards. But you leave that same oil there too long, we all know what's going to happen. So, Sean, go ahead, man. I know you're chomping at the bit.
No problem. Chris, when you get a report for us, from us, or see one of our reports, usually we've gone in there and done a deep dive and have a good understanding if the HVAC is in fact a source of what's going on in the home, or whether or not there's been cross-contamination. So hopefully we do a good enough job providing you with enough information before you get there as to what the problems could be. But talk to us about maybe some of the signs and symptoms people can, whether it's visual or not, look for in their home to kind of point them in the direction that the HVAC could be leading to poor air quality in their home.
Absolutely. Sometimes just someone's how they feel, or family members, how they're feeling, sometimes is an indicator there might be an issue. People always tell me that I have to dust so much. Why do I have to dust so frequently? That could be an indicator that there could be some leakage or issues going on that might need to be addressed. If there is discoloration or staining on the vent covers or the ceiling area around those, sometimes can be an indicator that there might be an issue going on. The air handling unit itself, if it's accessible, visible for the homeowner, they can look at the stand that it's on. Is there water staining possibly around the stand? Is there any discoloration around the box right above the top of the unit? Is the air handler cabinet sweating? Does it have condensation dripping off of it? Those are usually some indicators that someone might have some issues. Unfortunately, a lot of it really requires being able to get in there and look inside the system and be able to climb through the attic to determine, was something installed properly or not properly? Is it strapped up correctly? All of those things. So there's a few indicators. Mainly, a lot of times people are calling just because they don't feel well, or they might smell something. They call, they get a little bit of a musty odor. They call it the dirty sock syndrome, and it's just, mold off gassing within the system. And the air handling unit, it is an ideal climate for mold to grow. You have a cooling coil in there that is always wet. You get a biofilm that grows on that coil. And as a result of that condition within the air handling unit, you have paper diagrams in there, you have a wiring in there for motors and stuff that has a little plastic covering on it. Mold seems to love that stuff. I'm surprised it grows on the metal. I've seen mold pit metal so bad on a blower wheel that we couldn't even we had to replace it for a gentleman one time because it had pitted it so bad. Just from being on there for so long, it just mold's deteriorating. The surface that it's growing on. So. Really having the air handler properly inspected. NADCA recommends inspecting the system once a year. Healthcare facilities, they recommend every 6 months. Anyone that's having any type of issues health-wise, they might want to consider a year, every 6 months having the air handling equipment inspected. One, to make sure once it's gotten back to the right condition and it's being maintained, usually we don't find a lot of issues, but you never know. It's mold is resilient, even with all of the equipment that can be utilized to help keep it at bay. That stuff still grows. I've seen it growing on UV lights.
I was about to say, it will grow on what you put in there, and if dirt can stick to it, mold will grow on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to the air handler itself, other than some external visual signs that somebody can see, then again you're just back to how, if someone's not feeling well, excessive dusting, are they smelling anything unusual? Those are usually some signs that you might need to have somebody take a look at it. And again, I whenever I go to do an inspection, I always ask, do you have a service company? Do you have an air conditioning company that services this for you? Absolutely, we do. They come every 6 months. As a matter of fact, they were just here. Told me everything checked out great. We open up the air handling unit, it caked in mold. Let me back up. As a matter of fact, they sold me this UV light that, and if you read the box, it's going to kill mold. It's going to do all this stuff, and obviously we know that even though it's good preventive maintenance equipment, you can't just utilize it in a moldy system. You do have to physically get rid of all of that, address the issues that caused it to be there. Then your preventative equipment is implemented and can do a good job. But so many times we open it up, all kinds of mold in there. Well, why didn't they tell me? Well, usually they're really not trying to get involved in mold contamination and mold protocols. A lot of AC guys are. It's a trade. They're tradesmen. They strictly want to deal with the HVAC for the heating and cooling side of it, the mechanical functioning of the system. A lot of those companies don't really want their people out there mentioning the word mold or trying to address it any more than throwing a UV light in there. A lot of them just they don't want to clean. They're above being able to clean, wanting to clean equipment. They just want to handle the mechanical functionings of it. So a lot of it goes unmentioned, which is a shame because why didn't they mention that to me? I always ask them, because I don't feel good. Well, I really don't have an answer as to why they're not pursuing, trying to do a better job at also the hygiene side of it, not just the mechanical functionings, but again, many times we go, for years, people have been trying to address certain issues with the HVAC and they're just not getting answers. And we come in there and just find things that are wrong that seem very simple when you explain it to somebody. But for some reason, for everyone out there trying to address indoor air quality issues, that just seems to not be happening, right? I mean, ever since the pandemic, everybody has become indoor air quality experts, right? But far from professionals. They all want to, from your dryer vent cleaners to your carpet cleaners, they all feel that they can run out and buy some equipment and consult people on health related issues and can shove a brush up in the ductwork and bomb some sanitizer in there and it's all good to go. All the molds out of there. We know that is a terrible service when done in that manner.
And on our side of things, I think up until COVID rolled around, we were finally starting to get rid of these mold fogging companies that just come in and fog. But since 2020, we've seen those companies coming back in full force, and it seems like there's more of them by the week. Adam, are you experiencing the same thing?
I don't know what to say, man. When people, well, because I'm usually coming in after them to do it the right way.
Yeah,
I don't know how they stay in business. To be
I don't
perfectly honest.
either. I honestly don't know how they stay.
Well,
it's
actually,
like
sorry, go ahead.
I want to make another point because I want to pick out another thing, right? I talked about filters and people having false sense of security. The biggest one is what Chris just mentioned, where the HVAC guy told me everything was great. And to what level they inspected it outside of cooling and mechanical? Did they even open up the system? Did they go and inspect anything in the attic at all? Any of the ductwork or under your home or wherever the whatever, wherever the things are accessible for them to inspect? And usually the answer is no. So that's another thing that really gets to me, that people feel like they should be okay because in their mind, they did change their filter after 3 months. They did have their air conditioning company come out and look at their system. And they're still suffering because we know that's not enough, especially here in the Southeast, Florida specifically. And I'm sure it's the same in other environments. They have similar issues or other types of issues, but that gets to me when and if we weren't in this industry, we'd probably think the same thing. My mother, my father, my grandmother, my grandfather, aunt, uncle, like all know them, they do the exact same thing until I talk to them and I give them a little bit of information, and then they start to think to themselves, you know what, none of that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, I was just gonna talking about the fogging companies. Lately I've seen a lot of put duct cleaning companies in quotes for those who are listening and not watching, selling the fogging through the ductwork too. And just want to get your thoughts on that, Chris. If somebody ever calls a duct cleaning company and that's their solution, do you have any advice for our listeners?
Absolutely. So the EPA has approved 0 products to be fogged into air duct systems that make any claims of killing or eliminating mold. And there is no standard out there for that process. So anybody who is actually offering that as a service, making those claims, is just making the whole process up. If you were to ask any of them, well, can you show me the standard that you're following that tells you, what's the target organism that you're addressing within the ductwork? How long should that product remain on the surface? All of these different things. What are safety protocols for applying that? There's just not anything out there. So anybody that's saying that they're doing that, again, is just making it up. And I heed caution to anyone calling a company that says that they can clean and fog mold out of ductwork. It's not a thing. It's not an acceptable practice. If you have somebody calling you about health related concerns, and you're going to fog a biocide into the ductwork and tell them that the mold is going to be eliminated and killed, it to me it's a very scary proposition that those companies are doing.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I have to shake my head after every time you talk because we can all go back to really most of the homes we go into, and they've been given a lot of false information and are spending good money to try to take care of their issues, and ultimately find that it takes an expert, takes somebody who's been in this industry, takes oversight, takes a good thorough inspection, takes testing, sometimes takes engineering to help put all the pieces together to figure out, why is it there? How do I get rid of it? Was it removed properly? And Sean and I talk obviously a lot about the remediation process, here, from testing to the finish line. So maybe just give us a quick I know this is going to be tough. Give us a quick description of what it might look like if you were to clean somebody's system. What would that entail typically?
So once we've made a determination that the system is actually cleanable, so NADCA has different conditions. Condition 1, which would be normal ecology, just dust accumulation, construction debris, something like that within the system. We're not dealing with mold contamination. NADCA has in their standard, they discuss using proper vacuuming equipment, placing systems under negative pressure. There are many different cleaning tools from compressed air tools to rotating brushes. Again, depending on what type of ductwork you're dealing with, rotating brushes are a viable option. If you have soft bristled brushes, you have carbide brushes for sheet metal ductwork. So you can come in and first of all, you have return ductwork, you have the air handling unit, and you have the supply ductwork. So first of all, we come in and seal everything off, and then we address each of those sections separately. We clean the return ductwork separately. You hook up a negative air machine, you're placing the system under negative pressure, because anything, as you start to disturb anything within that system, you don't want it to come out into the environment. So you have it under negative pressure, and anything you're dislodging into the airstream gets sucked into a large HEPA vacuum. You start at one end and you move all the way towards the vacuum, cleaning every part of that system. Now you disconnect and you switch over to the supply side, and same thing. You hook up. You are putting the system under negative pressure, and you start at one end and you move. It's called the push-pull method. So you're pushing the dust, dirt, and debris, and the vacuum is pulling it all at the same time. So you're constantly moving it from one end all the way to the collection vacuum. And again, you can use a combination of air tools, rotating brushes, contact vacuuming with a little round nylon brush. A lot of commercial duct cleaning that is so big that you're getting in there and just vacuuming every bit of that surface, contact vacuuming it to try to get it clean.
Wait, so you mean the ductwork that's like on NCIS and Die Hard where they're walking through it, the flashlight, those things are real?
Yeah.
Wow.
I have spent a lot, in my first decade in this industry was spent doing commercial and industrial, HVAC systems.
Yeah.
Systems so big, air handlers so big, you could park a van inside of the unit.
Yeah, I haven't never known.
Ductwork so big, so I've spent a lot of time crawling ductwork, cleaning it.
Wow.
And coating it, with environmental suits on, full face respirators. I can show you some pictures of back then when we used to do that. But yes, a lot of it is not. It's not as simple as you take the vent down and you climb up in there and you're climbing across the building to the other side, and every bit of it's so big and nice and clean.
Right into the bank vault.
I was just going to say, if we need to rob somebody rob a building, we know who to go to.
That is funny you mentioned that. I was doing a bank one Sunday afternoon because that was the only day that they were closed. They gave me keys to get into the bank. We're cleaning the HVAC system. I have ladders going up on the rooftop, because a lot of commercial buildings have package units, or they call them RTUs, or rooftop units, and it's all a self-contained unit on the roof, and it's pulling air and conditioning it and putting it back into the space. When you open that up, you're looking down into the building. So, and around that time, they had actually had several banks that people were trying to break into, and so I'm inside there. It's just after lunchtime, and I'm working, and the next thing you know, I look out the door, and there's all these police surrounding the bank.
Oh man.
And they thought that somebody was trying to break in and rob the bank. And so it took a good 1 to 2 hours for it all to be sorted out. And I'm like, look, I've got one day here on this Sunday. Well, while you're working it out, do you mind if I continue to do it? And I had stuff, I had equipment and everything strewn everywhere. And I don't know what kind of robber is setting all that up to try to get on somebody, but it did get resolved, and we were able to finish the job. But since you mentioned that, I thought that was funny.
Yeah, we do a lot. I do a lot more residential. I have yet to to experience that size of ductwork, but that's funny that was actually real.
I've been in ductwork so big that we walked down it in an industrial plant over in DeLand, so big that your equipment was actually just no good at all. And they had to operate all of their machinery, they had this lubricant that ran through all of these like little tubes to lubricate their machinery and stuff. Well, it got in the air, and so everything had this stickiness to it. So obviously we're able to get in the air handler and hand clean all of that stuff. But when it came to the ductwork, we walked down the ductwork and just picked up little pieces of debris that were stuck to the sticky stuff that was on the surface of the duct. So, but back to what you were asking, we're dealing with mainly a lot of residential cleaning here. So we can clean, both sides of the system, the return ductwork, the supply ductwork, when we can. And then we're left with the air handling unit, and to clean that properly, it needs to be completely disassembled. There's different levels of cleaning. Everyone's level of concern, might be a little bit differently, but in the end, to be able to properly clean an air handling unit, the blower needs to come out, the blower assembly. You've got the housing, the motor, the wheel, all of that. You can't get the motor wet, and in order to clean it properly, you have to use some cleaning products and water. That all needs to go outside and get disassembled, and the motor gets all hand cleaned. The wires get wiped down. The wheel and the housing can be cleaned with solutions. Now we have the cooling coil. That needs to be removed from the cabinet because there's areas of that coil that you just cannot get to in place. You cannot, properly clean that. A lot of your big, again, I always refer back because I've just done so much commercial and industrial work, over these years. A lot of that stuff, you don't remove those big giant coils. You get on one side with a steam or a pressure washer, and you're cleaning those in place. You got to get to both sides of them, and a lot of those coils are a foot thick. So making sure that those are clean, and the only way you can verify those is again through static pressure. Your static pressure checks. You do a static pressure check prior to cleaning, and then after. That's your verification that you actually improve that coil, and you got a lot of stuff out of there. For residential units, again, in place is just impossible to get to all the little nooks and crannies. So you need to remove that cooling coil. You have to pump the system down and remove it. So if you're not a licensed HVAC contractor, those companies are trying to clean those in place, and it's just not possible, especially for someone who's needing that piece of equipment cleaned to a clearance test level of cleaning where, like Sean would come in and do swabs to verify that it was cleaned properly, not going to be done in place. So that coil gets removed, taken again outside. You can clean all of the coil, the top part, the intake side of it, all of the drain pan that's associated with it, that plastic pan. You got to be able to get inside of it, underneath it. You've got the drain line that needs to be flushed out. So you have the cabinet liner. Of course, depending on what type of liner you have inside the cabinet, there's many different kinds. Depending on what the contamination was on that, it can either be disinfected and wiped down. If it's a porous liner, you can't really spray any disinfectant or wet product on a porous duct surface or a liner inside of the air handling unit. And so you might have to scrape it out, possibly reline it with maybe a closed cell liner, or a lot of cases you can vacuum that liner and you can coat it with it's an antimicrobial resurfacing product, but it is an acceptable remediation practice that is done. And again, we do a lot of that in commercial ductwork because, for example, you go into a hospital, you have a drop ceiling. You pop up one of those ceiling tiles and you look up and all you see are pipes and electrical. That's all first. Then you get up to the ductwork, and it's big sheet metal ductwork, and you're just not going to replace that stuff. So if they're dealing with microbial issues, which many of them are, you have to be able to access that ductwork. You clean it the best you can, and then all you're left with is being able to apply a coating product to that porous duct surface in order to, duct coating, its main purpose is to lock down fiber or loose particles, fraying, like a lot of that old sheet metal ductwork, that liner on the inside, that's just like ductboard. It's an insulation on the inside of the sheet metal. And a lot of times that older stuff, it starts to fray and degrade, and it gets blown down the ductwork and then out of the vent onto somebody's desk. Well, you can clean on vacuum all of that. Well, you coat that duct surface, you lock down all of those particles so they're no longer being able to be released into the airstream. Well, as a secondary component to when that coating cures, if there was any odor on that surface, well, it's gone. And if there was any microbial contamination, it's gone. Not that it was removed, but it has been, I hate to say,
it's been Han Soloed.
and I hate to say encapsulated, because an encapsulant and a coating are a little bit of a different product, believe it or not. But it is basically locked into that material that can no longer be moist air is no longer it's no longer able to take that moist air and then start proliferating within the duct system. The odor, we do fire restoration. You get in there and you vacuum all that soot out of the ductwork. Well, you can't suck the smoke odor out of the ductwork. So how do you address that if you're not able to replace it? Well, you clean it and then you coat it with a resurfacing product. It's called restoration or restoring it. Restoring the ductwork back to a like new condition. And so, that's a lot of times. But for residential, you have to be real careful when offering that. You really have to know how to apply those products. And I have found over the years that, I see, a lot of times a duct cleaning company that will do that. They're just in there for one day. And so they're going to clean and they're going to coat something and they're gone. Well, that product that soaks into that material. So if you look at coated duct surfaces that have just had that one time and then they're out of there, a lot of times it doesn't look very good.
Right.
For us, a lot of our projects are multiple days, week-long projects. So anytime we're coating anything, and sometimes, unfortunately, like, for example, junction boxes in an attic, some of those are pretty big. You cannot custom fabricate those boxes in an attic that after the fact, after your ceilings and all, they're just too big. How to drag a piece of ductboard up in there and build a square box in a tight attic is not always, it's just not going to happen. So as long as the ductboard material mechanically has no issues and we're just dealing with some hygiene issues on the inside, you can clean it and coat that with an antimicrobial coating, resurfacing product. It has to be multiple coatings. You need to coat it. It needs to set for a day. And again, since ours are multiple day, we're able to come back and I do multiple coatings. And when you look at a surface that's been coated multiple times, I mean, it has the smoothest. It really looks good. And then moving forward, if conditions are right, you can still get mold growing on that surface. It's not a cure-all. Just because you have that on there, it is a preventative. Mainly, we have to make sure that the conditions that caused it to be there are addressed and are not continuing to occur. But at least if you have that, even if I was to replace a box because it's porous, it would be, in good judgment to coat that surface so that anytime in the future, if we do get some microbial issue in a supply boot box or the plenum, well, it's no longer porous, right? It's a smooth surface. We can actually get in there with a disinfectant, spray it, and actually wipe that surface clean at that point. But again, there is no one-time cure for mold. If the conditions remain the same, no matter what you're doing, it will grow. So along with doing all of these things, we're always back to making sure we address how did we get to where we are right now so that we stand the best chance of not having any of that stuff recur.
Yeah, if you're an apartment complex maintenance man, you're probably not going to watch this episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is gonna hurt to hear that. What do you mean? You can't just spray something out of a pump sprayer and you're good?
Yeah, you just spraying it with the bleach and calling it a day.
Spray and pray.
Spray and pray.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Adam, we got a few minutes left here. Why don't you take a couple just to explain to us how important it is from the remediator side of things to work with a HVAC company you can trust as part of the process? Because I know that can be one of the.
You heard it. I mean, I don't need to sell what Chris does. If you've talked to other HVAC contractors, you'll know that they're two complete different languages. And I deal with that, right, on a job site. I don't typically hire the HVAC contractor. I leave it up to the homeowner, because sometimes it's in an area where Chris isn't available or doesn't work, or so a lot of times I'm dealing with contractors who don't understand this process whatsoever, and a lot of times end up encouraging the homeowner to replace the system if they can, if they can't find somebody that at least speaks somewhat some of the language Chris speaks. There unfortunately is a lack of quality air conditioning contractors out there as it pertains to remediation.
Yeah.
Replacement. Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of quality companies out there that can do replacement, but cleaning, there's a ocean. There's an ocean upon an ocean of knowledge, lack of good quality HVAC contractors that know how to do it properly.
And really, you need all of that. You've got two sides of it. You got your air duct cleaners, and you've got your HVAC contractors.
Yep.
And we've kind of combined everything. And somebody calls up and they say, I want all of my stuff either cleaned or I want it replaced. And we start like Sean, you come out and you do an inspection. We start off all of our projects with an HVAC inspection. It's very important because somebody says, no, I just want it all replaced. Well, if you're in a typical AC company, they'll just run right out and they're giving you an estimate to tear your stuff out and replace it. Well, you're going to have the same problems that you had to begin with. They're not addressing, my inspections involve all of the components of the HVAC system and the surrounding environment, like we were discussing earlier, that relate to, things that can contribute to poor indoor air quality. And I'm finding a lot lately that outside of poor installation, there's a lot of things, building practices, especially here in Florida, that are passing brand new construction that are wreaking havoc on the HVAC system. That even if it was all installed properly, you're going to have, condensation problems. You're going to have, issues within the home as a result of lack of ventilation in the attic. Certain types of insulation that just don't work well here.
Spray foam. Spray foam.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't get me wrong. I think the spray foam is a good insulation. You're not dealing with fiberglass.
It's too good.
It's clean. But it's like in Florida, up north, I bet it must work great. But in Florida, it's like putting a plastic bag over the house. And unless you understand that and you're going to address the elevated humidity that it creates, you're going to have a problem. We did a commercial building just recently that had brand new, I think it was only a year old. They had the spray foam. And when we got there to actually, I did an inspection. And then when we actually went there to do work for them, and I climbed up into the attic space, the humidity was like around 90. And there was water actually dripping off of the spray foam onto the ceiling, and all of the ceiling drywall was so soft that our drywall saw to make openings to get up in there wouldn't even cut the drywall. It basically just tore it, and it was just basically ripping down.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not just so if we can clean it, great, but we need to make sure we're properly diagnosing the hygiene side and the mechanical aspects of the system and the surrounding environment to make sure that we're getting it right. Because someone that's spending all this time, they're not feeling well. There's nothing worse than spending all of this time, money, they're stressed out. And, I don't know how many times we've been into homes that they're like, I just can't believe it. We had the house gutted down to the frames. We had everything put back. We've been out of the house for 2 years. We've only been back in here for a few months. And we're seeing all these problems again. What's going on? And you just start pointing them out. Well, this wasn't done right. This is not correct. That needs to be addressed. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in homes where now they're moving back out a second time and re-gutting the house again. And just what an absolute nightmare for someone that finally thinks they're getting back into their home. And nope, it's just not the case.
It's a nightmare being the person having to break the news. So I can't imagine how they feel, as a family having to go through that a second time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I, it's always, you know, Sean and Adam, both of you guys, like myself, we are very passionate about what we do. It for us, first and foremost is getting it right, getting this one right, not just getting one more, but making sure that the one that we're taking care of for somebody is being done correctly. We all have a proven track record of getting it right. And it just speaks volumes when you go in there and can actually console somebody that is standing there on a Friday afternoon in full tears in their kitchen, because you've just explained to them that the place that they take refuge is causing them to feel sick, their family, their kids, and that all of this stuff has to be taken care of to get it back to a good condition. Even that part of it, just being able to help someone feel comfortable that this time they are on the right track, because many of them have been dealing with these issues in other homes, and they're just like, this is my second or third time dealing with this, and I don't want to go through it again. Well, we can show you what we've been doing for years now. We're going to show you what we're going to be able to do for you here. And then moving forward, how to properly maintain that environment so that it stays where you need it to, so that you can, feel safe and have good, clean indoor air quality.
Chris, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to come back on the show.
Absolutely.
It's unfortunate, but I feel like I feel like we've been talking, but there's so much.
We've barely scratched
more.
the surface here.
I know.
Barely.
We have like a list of things to talk about, and we spent, so much time, and we need to spend so much time really kind of pulling back the layers of this thing, because it to me is the biggest piece of the puzzle. The structure, I think it's a lot easier to identify cause and origin, correct those issues, poor quality, poor workmanship, building science issues, with your trade, and what ultimately happens when it goes wrong is easily outside of a house fire, or a flood from a pipe on the third floor. It's probably the most devastating, it can have the most impact in a negative way if it's left unchecked and left to cause issues, because you create the wrong humidity conditions in your interior environment, you are gutting your house.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's, I know it sounds extreme and crazy for anybody who's listening to this and has never experienced something like that, but we all know from experiences that it happens a lot. And that's just humidity. That's not even going into all the other issues mechanically. And then with the building science, that has nothing to do with the HVAC system, due to poor insulation, poor ventilation, poor construction, or just changing the environment during a renovation. And that happens a lot too. Older home, and they apply newer technology or newer methodology to it, but the house wasn't engineered for that.
Nope.
And that can cause major issues too. You said, the house that has 5 returns. I'm like, man, new construction, but anything, 10 years or maybe 15 years or before that, you're lucky to have 2 returns, much less the one main return in your space, which is asked to filter and dry and be the all end all be all for everything in the building. So
absolutely. And so many people want to close doors, a system that just has one return. An open door is your return from that room. The little gap underneath the door is just not enough, so as soon as somebody closes that door, they've just changed the pressurization within the entire building, and you're putting areas under negative and positive pressure, and now you're having all kinds of issues.
I'm clipping this part because my wife loves to close the doors in our house, and we have one return in our 100-year-old home, and she doesn't trust me. But now that you've said it, I'm going to use that.
I can send you a video that has a glass house that has these little flaps, and there's a little thing that shows whenever you close it, which would be a door, and you see the flaps change automatically, and so you're pressurizing and depressurizing rooms, and air is being sucked in because it has to be replaced, So just before we got off too far, I just want to say, on these types of projects, they really involve a collective effort from multiple groups, trades, to get it right. It's not just a simple, oh, just this one thing and now you had it good. So a lot of times when I get called, to look at an HVAC system, well, a lot of times I have to say, you really need to call, Sean, because we need some testing done and we need some more investigation of the building. Or, man, I'm seeing some serious stuff on this platform. I don't know how far it extends. We need to give Adam a call because he needs to come in as a mold remediator and evaluate these things to make sure what, if we need to do something or what we can. So, and a lot of people try to get in these projects they're undertaking, and they're not getting it fully accomplished correctly because a lot of contractors out there just cannot seem to work together to accomplish and have a successful project. And it requires a group effort all the way around, from the assessment to the remediation, to the HVAC, and then the verification at the end, and being able to work together for the customer, the client, not for, saying I'm better than you, or, oh, don't use my ladder, or you're in my way here. It really takes everybody wanting to say, put that aside and take all of our knowledge and really put it together to make this environment right. And it really takes a coordinated effort. And I know we've been doing a really good job over the years of making that happen, making a very difficult, stressful situation seem we really make it seem simple, getting in there and handling it in a timely manner with really no issues, compared to what I hear, the nightmare stories that people deal with so many other, contractors and companies that are out there trying to do this. It's very important that the people that are doing it for you, really have an invested interest in doing a good job.
That's the whole purpose of me and Sean even coming up with, talking about doing a podcast like this. It needs to be a community. There needs to be a forum, and there needs to be a place where people who are experts in this field can talk about it, because otherwise you're going to continue to get the misinformation out there. You're going to continue to hear the same thing you've always heard. Mm-hmm. And there isn't really, outside of forums, some internet forums, which a lot of times are dark, scary places, and you don't know what to believe. We want to talk to the people in the know, because I don't know it all. I don't know your trade. I don't know Sean's trade. Sean doesn't know mine, and you don't know mine like the way I do. We have such intimate knowledge of our piece in this. And, we've had functional medicine doctors on and other people in the industry, and we're going to continue to do this because we want to build that community. This isn't a Florida issue. This is a Earth issue, and people all over the globe are battling these same types of issues. And because you have all these big box companies now that you want that one turnkey type of process because it's easier, they're just getting one note, one piece of information, one person's opinion, and a lot of times they're not getting what they're paying for. Yeah. And ultimately are being sold something that isn't going to take care of the problem that they're dealing with.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that our company, we definitely differentiated ourselves from the 4,000 other AC contractors out there. Is when I go out, I don't go out to sell anybody anything. I'm going out to diagnose what's going on and make proper recommendations and be able to guide somebody through, how to get from where they are to where we want to go, and know that is the correct thing. And there's just so much misinformation out there that I've looked at some forums and stuff that I read. I just, it's very frustrating. And sometimes I just can't look at it because,
you're exactly right.
I'm the same way. Yeah. I just can't. I can't anymore.
It's all about educating while you're out there, Chris. You stated it perfectly, because ultimately it's about educating the homeowner so they can make the best decision for them and their family.
That's and indoor air quality is not just we deal with a lot of microbial and mold issues because a lot of people we deal with are sick from that. But over 25 years of addressing indoor air quality, I'm addressing everything from elevated CO2, carbon dioxide, which make you feel lethargic, and there's all kinds of reasons that can occur. I assisted a bank one time where on Fridays the ladies were not feeling well on a Friday afternoon. So in investigating the building, come to find out that on Fridays everybody would have their checks. They would get in the drive-through line, and the cars would back far enough up. And on the outside of the building, because commercial buildings require outdoor air makeup, what they call makeup air, 20% makeup air. Well, this outdoor makeup air intake was on this one side of the building where the cars would back up far enough on Friday, and it was sucking in gas fumes and putting it into the building.
Huh? Whoa, exhaust fume? Holy man.
It all happened on, so, investigating, now that's a serious indoor air quality problem unrelated to mold, but people were feeling very ill as a result of it.
Man, that can kill you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, same thing on rooftops. You get pooling water up there that gets all kinds of molds and bacteria sitting in that water. You got the air intake, the outdoor air intake, air's being drawn right over the top of that moldy, bacteria-laden water, sucked up into the system, dispersed into the environment. So when it comes to indoor air quality, there's lots of things that we can talk about. Obviously microbial issues being the biggest in Florida, for people. But I've addressed many things that cause people to not feel well. Just in indoor air quality, low level pollutants. The bags that you bring your groceries home in have sat in a warehouse. They've got gas fumes on them. They have rat feces on them. You track stuff in on your shoes, so there's all kinds of little low level pollutants that are introduced to environments that cause people to not feel well. So, just being aware of all of those things, really makes a difference in trying to help somebody, get to the air quality that they're trying to achieve without just throwing tons of money at it and then never getting there. That's probably the most, got to be so frustrating.
Yep, absolutely.
Chris, we thank you for coming on today, man. I mean,
absolutely.
Like we said before, we've been teasing this for a while, so we're glad to finally get you on there and talk HVAC. If somebody wants to work with you, where can they find you?
They can call us. Phone number would be 800-980-4527. They can always visit our website at enviroairsys.com. A lot of good information on there. That would probably be, other than, of course, always appreciated when you guys, put our name out there for someone to give us a call. So those would be the ways that they can reach us. It starts with consultation and find out what they have going on, what their issues are. When I write protocols or a scope of work for somebody, I'm taking everything into consideration from Sean, your initial report. A lot of times they've already spoken to Adam, so I'm taking the things that Adam has told them into consideration. I'm taking their health concerns into consideration, and then I'm taking my inspection, of the HVAC and everything into consideration to put together an informative, complete scope of work that is going to address and resolve the issues that they're dealing with.
And I think I speak for Sean and probably you, and this probably sounds like it's crazy because we all operate businesses, but if you're an AC contractor out there and you do it the right way, and what Chris is saying is you're slamming your hand on the table and saying, yes, finally, somebody who knows what they're talking about. We'd love to hear from you. We would really love to hear from you. We're looking for more people out. There's so many people that are suffering from these issues, and Chris can only handle so much, especially if you're outside of the Bay Area. If you're anywhere in the state or in other states where Sean does testing, we're always looking for good, qualified people in the industry who know what they're doing, and remediators included. Reach out to us, please. We'd love to build a network.
Absolutely.
Because there's always people out there looking for the right company, somebody who is knowledgeable, somebody who isn't going to go in there and fog it. And then you think things have been taken care of and you and your family and your children, don't feel good. And maybe the fog, whatever they fogged in there probably isn't good for you either. So
yeah, I have to follow around behind those people that are really kind of giving what could be a good service, a really making it a not so good service.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
Gentlemen, it was always, as always, it's always enjoyable to talk to you. I thoroughly enjoy our conversations. Again, for anyone that's really trying to do the right thing and educate people on having a healthy environment.
Oh, don't worry. You're coming back.
Absolutely. For sure.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for listening to the Mold Show.